Hey everybody, what's up? I'm your host, Spencer Andrews, A.K.A. DJ Dre, and you're in the mix with DJ producer Max Richardson from the UK.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on the show,
Thank you
Max.
very much.
Well, you're welcome. You know
Well,
that's why we pay the big
thank you for
dollars.
having me. Yeah, really glad to be here.
That's why we
That's it. That's it.
that's why we pay the big bucks. So, let me ask you a question. I know you were or still are a DJ, but if anything more, you're a producer. Um, when
Yes. Yeah.
what was your influence to become a DJ? Was it a what or a who?
Oh, it's a tough question. I mean, it's always. I've always been musical since I was a kid. Right. I played the piano when I was a kid. I picked up the guitar when I was a teenager, as every teenager does, of course. And I think sort of DJing was kind of on the periphery for me. Really, it was something that always interested me, but I'd never tried, my hand on the decks or anything like that. I think one day I just saw in one of the music stores around here, saw the decks and kind of got looking into it and went, well, why don't I try it?
Right,
And
right.
then I think when I went to university, that was where it really kind of took off, essentially. Yeah, I think I've always liked music, I've liked records, and it was a natural way for me to, in my bedroom, be able to change the records over, essentially. Yeah, yeah. I think I don't think there's a kind of single thing that you can pin it down to as such, really. I think it was sort of, in a way, I think it was a natural continuation of, listening to music and playing instruments and things like that. Yeah.
Right. It's funny that you actually say that because, of course, I picked up the guitar at a certain age. I picked up the drums.
Of course, everyone does.
Yeah, I picked up the drums at a certain age. But I mean, you on the other hand, I mean, you're about the only person I kind of looked into your resume, and you seem to be a little bit of a savant. Because I mean, tell me again what your musical background is, because it's kind of interesting what your musical background is.
Yeah, it's not the most usual to say the least. So I kind of, as a kid, I played the piano. I played classical piano really, and I still do to a point and things. But again, as when I was a teenager, I sort of picked up the guitar and kind of moved into that way. As I went to university and things, I sort of moved more into like electronic music. I think the issue was, of course, that for the degree that I did, I was, playing like classical music on the piano. So I was playing Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev, the big kind of a lot of the Russian composers like that.
Of course.
And the issue is, I didn't really then want to kind of get home and play the piano myself, you know. So it was things like electronics, so synthesizers and like house music, techno music, that kind of thing was a really sort of good way for me to break apart from that kind of classical music mindset, really. Yeah, I love classical music, I do still,
Right.
but
Well, I mean, of course, classical
it's
music
not
is not the
my thing.
right. Classical music isn't the best way to pick
Sorry.
up women.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, you can't get a career in that at all, of course, or anything like that. It's a skill set to have to be able to play the piano, of course. And I love playing the piano. I do. Play a lot of I'm playing some Beethoven at the moment. In my spare time, trying to get back to grips with it. But it's not really. It's quite solitary. You're doing it by yourself. It's not very collaborative. It's not very sociable.
No, it's not. Not at all. No, you're right. I mean, you can't collaborate with. Well, I mean, if you want to try to do a jam session, maybe with classical, you can collaborate. But I understand what you're saying in that matter. Who have you been listening to recently? Who do you listen to?
Oh man. Oh, it's one of those obvious questions, but I never see it coming. I never ever see it coming. I'm completely blindsided.
Thank you.
I've been really into Springsteen the past week or so.
Wow.
I'm in a big Springsteen mood at the moment. I love his stuff. Bob Dylan. I'm a huge fan of Bob Dylan. He's quite possibly my favorite artist, I'd have to say, of all time. I'm a huge, huge Dylan fan. Last week, I've been listening to there's a group in Dublin who are making waves at the moment called Fontaines DC. I don't think they're particularly big in the US. They're
No, no,
kind of
not
punk
all.
stuff really at the moment. Yeah, they're just sort of on the verge of making it here. They're kind of punk new wave type stuff. Fontaines, DC, Dublin City, very very good.
Right. I mean, like I said, for me, my background with music, I came up on rock, which is now considered classic rock.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but actually, I listen to everything excluding country. Oh
it's always
yeah,
country, isn't it? No
uh,
one ever says I listen to everything excluding like classical. It's always country.
I mean, believe it or not, believe it or not, I mean, I'll listen to classical once in a blue, depending on if I'm
Yeah,
doing something or if I really like need to get my mind on a clean slate. But actually,
yeah.
and it drives the wife crazy. I've actually just revisited Metallica lately. So, um,
Oh man, Metallica. The
yeah,
Black Album was the soundtrack of my teenage years.
right.
I can't emphasize that enough.
So that's been driving her crazy. And it's funny because whenever I put Metallica on, it's almost as if I sit back and I look at myself and I say, wow, you're a fucking odd man, because even my friends, a lot of my friends didn't know that, when I tell them I listen to everything, they thought it was within the R&B, reggae genre, and they
Yeah, the
hear,
kind of the DJ sphere. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And then I pull up in front of their house and I'm cranking, just Metallica, and it's just and
Yeah, it's the best way to be, isn't it? Of course.
they're just like, what the hell are you listening to? And it's like, Metallica, dude, Metallica. um, what what do people misunderstand about you most within what you do? Is there a misunderstanding about what you're trying to do? Because I think I think with the uh, production end, um,
Mm.
if you are discussing it with other people, sometimes they just can't get a grasp on the fact that you know, I mean, we're gonna have to get to it obviously because then the conversation makes no sense. So maybe I should ask you this first: what are you doing?
Fun.
Are you remixing music? Are you composing your own? What is it you're actually doing with your production?
I think it's a very big question, really, in the sense that the way I see it is this: the music industry is not what it was even maybe, well, definitely 20, but maybe 10 years ago, even with the advent of streaming, of Spotify, and things like that. Of course, anyone with a laptop in their bedroom can make potentially a number one hit single. You don't need to go into the studio, you don't need this expensive equipment that you needed in the 70s, 80s, say.
Right.
It's all accessible to the masses now, of course. Now, that's great. It's fantastic that people are able to make the music and record it. But the issue is, I think, it's kind of eaten away at those traditional roles where you're a mixing engineer, you're a mastering engineer, you're a DJ, you're a producer, you're a session musician, etc., etc., etc. I think people are required these days to not specialize. No, that's not that. You can specialize, but you can't just say, I am a producer, I am this. I think to me, the word producer is quite a nice word because it doesn't as such mean anything specifically. So a lot of my work is mastering work. I do an awful lot of that, of getting people's tracks, polishing them up to, the good standard. I do some production work with people, so I make some beats and things like that I am able to lease to people. I do a lot of non-commercial music, things like TV adverts and things like that, of course.
Oh wow.
And the thing is, it's not. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's okay. But the thing is, it's not. I don't think it's helpful to pigeonhole yourself into this one thing, saying, "Why would I mix music? Because I'm not a mixing engineer." I think in this day and age, you have to learn the skill set to be able to, to work in that field. Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, um, I feel that a lot of people that I'm sorry to say it, I it's an opinion. That's all. I think a lot of people that are saying I'm a producer are working on their own music, and
Yes, definitely, definitely.
and they have that goal. I'm not going to call it a dream. I'll say goal. They have that goal where they want to become a well-known artist. They are performing in clubs and
Yes,
clubs.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so but it's different to what you're doing, where you just said you're taking people's tracks and you're polishing them up. That's a money making side of it for you. You're doing the TV.
I,
You're doing
I don't. It's not necessarily just a money making side. I think I do really enjoy what I do, of course, but ultimately it's my job. You know what I mean? And it's very important, I think, to have that distinction of this is play and this is work. You know,
right.
if I'm working on music for me doing an album, that's for me. That's
Of
play. You
course,
know,
definitely.
but then yeah, yeah,
But
then a mastering job, say, or yeah, the work side of things, definitely.
right, but what you've done is, which a lot of people have not, and you've been lucky to do it, is you've been able to take your skill. And I think you should be proud of it. If you're not, but you don't seem like that type of guy, but you should be proud of the fact that you've taken a skill and you've turned it into a money making position. You're home every day, but you're working. But you know, listen, you don't have to do the old 9 to 5 routine. You don't have to work for somebody
That's
to.
it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that you're not doing a 9 to 5 routine. I'm saying is you
No,
wake
no, no.
up,
Of course.
you wake up, you're in your drawers, you're in your bickers, whatever you call them over there, but the
It's
whole
over there. Here, 3,000 miles away. It's boxes, is what you call them. There you go.
we call them that too here. But I'm just saying, you're in your drawers. You go downstairs, you fire up the equipment, and you work on what you're working on, and you've made that happen for you.
That's it. Yeah.
And at the
And
end of the
I'm very,
week,
very fortunate to be in this situation. I don't take it for granted for a
right,
moment, not at all. You know, I'm very, very grateful to be able to be in this position.
right,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and not many people can be in that position. They go to a
No,
job,
no, absolutely.
they work 9 to 5, and then they die to come home and work on that track that they were working on to try to grab that goal and become an artist. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
here goes a good one. Have you ever gotten an insult that you're proud of in regards to your
An
music?
insult.
Yes, like I've always had people tell me, oh, your music is shit, and I really can't remember. Like, I'm proud of that. When people tell me my music is shit, I'm very proud of it because it means that, in other words, the least amount of insults that I get, I am
Yeah.
proud of. But then
It's not. If someone is calling your music shit, it means it's different.
right,
It's
right,
it means you're doing something differently. In
right.
my eyes, that's a good thing. That's better than doing an okay song. You know,
But
if you're doing something divisive enough like that, yeah,
right.
definitely.
But when I play for 1,000 people and nobody tells me my music is shit, so it's just that. So it's it's just funny. That's the way that I kind of word it. Uh do your
Yeah,
do your parents know what you're
I
doing?
don't know. I mean,
You don't know if you've ever
yes,
gotten
yes, they
that.
do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
How do
yeah.
your how do your
I am sorry.
how do your parents describe what you do? And it's funny. The reason
Um,
why, well, hold on. The reason why I'm asking you this, parents are funny. They are obviously older than us. Times have changed for them. They've come up into a different era, and you tell them
yeah,
what we
of
tell
course.
them what we do, and it's like my regular job, which I'm not going to get too much into, but I work emergency services. I work with the fire department. I work with the police, and I work with emergency medical
Right. Okay.
services.
Yeah.
And I've explained this to my parents several times what I do, and when my parents tell somebody, they say, "Oh yeah, he's on an ambulance." I'm not. I, I run and I
It's the
run an
one
entire
vehicle you're not on. Yeah.
I run an entire fleet of men and women that work for a city, for a city, and they're just like, yeah, he's on an ambulance. That's not what I do. So,
No, of course.
how would your parents describe what you do?
I think, yeah, again, it's a difficult one because of the way the industry's changed. My parents have been very, very supportive of me since I was a kid. They've really kind of pushed music. I mean, my dad's a huge jazz fan, so that's really kind
Oh,
of
okay.
shone through into me. I think the way they would describe me is predominantly as a musician, I guess. And that's quite a nice, easy way of putting it into a box, isn't it? Putting all these little individual roles of mastering and mixing and so into a box. But it does make me laugh that they don't quite understand. I mean, I when I DJ, of course, I don't particularly DJ too much anymore,
Right.
but I might get back out there a little bit, occasionally.
Never
But
hurts.
it was it was very funny because my mum really more than my dad didn't understand DJing, as in knew what it was, knew the kind of knew it's playing records in front of people, but didn't know why that was kind of an art form, if you want to call it that. And it was fantastic because I've been listening to mixes on YouTube of Jazzy Jeff and Carl Cox and people like that, of course, and she's just going, but they're not doing anything. They're playing records. I'm going, well, yes, they are, but if there's an art to it, it's the art
Yeah.
of pressing play, isn't it?
Exact. No, no, but it's very true. If the way that you put it, if you look at it that way, it's so true that um, if one was to look at it that way, it's they're playing records. What else are they doing? But
Yeah,
there is an art form to it. You're right. I mean,
absolutely.
I've always said that
The big thing for me.
and it's a
No, go on.
skill.
Sorry.
It's a skill.
Yes,
I've always told
100%.
people becoming a DJ, there's a skill. For some of us, there was an education. And these are the
Oh yeah.
things that,
When you
these
look
are
at things
things.
like beat matching, you look at everything BPM selection, genre selection, track selection. I think the biggest learning curve for me with DJing was definitely learning to read a room and
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
think what music is going to go down next. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a lot of things people miss. Is their biggest thing is how to read the room. I mean, if you don't read the room,
Absolutely. 100%.
right? Tell me about if you have three influential people in your life and how they impact you, or how
Oh,
many influential people do you have in your life and how they impact you? I mean, you can go up to three.
well, it's a nice and kind of cheesy answer, I guess. It's the proper corny way out. My girlfriend is probably the driving kind of force behind a lot of what I do. She's phenomenal. She
Yeah.
is very, very encouraging. She really helps me to kind of. I think maybe I'm sure you know this yourself, of course. When you work on projects, it's easy to maybe get a bit wrapped up in what you do, wrapped up in yourself and in you, essentially.
I've spent
And
many hours in
it's
the chair.
absolutely, absolutely. My girlfriend's fantastic at kind of pulling me out of that and dragging me into the real world, but
Right.
not in a dissuading way, just simply in a kind of more realistic perspective of things. She's very, very supportive of what I do. She's always selling CDs for me, things like that. Fantastic at the shows. Yeah, brilliant. But yeah, I'd say she's kind of a huge driving force behind, in particular, going full time earlier this year with music related stuff.
Right.
I couldn't have done it without her. Absolutely not.
I think for me, I,
Other people.
there you go. I mean, I think for me, I get almost like tunnel vision. If I'm working on something technical and I get
Yeah,
stumped, because I also work on the electronics and fixing it and troubleshooting it and stuff like that. Um,
of course. Yeah.
I can see night turn into day, and I know the worst part. And
Oh, I know.
the worst part is I know I'm doing the same thing over and over and over, and I just
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
stop it. And it's like And then the wife will come out and go, "Oh, you haven't come to bed yet." She's getting dressed to go to work. It's like, go to bed, and it's like, yeah, yeah, but she's not the driving force over
But
here now.
yeah, I am exactly the same. I can't kind of put something down until I've finished it, really,
Yeah.
whether that's a track, if it's a track, if it's a job, whatever, if I'm sort of working on something and I really get wrapped up in that headspace, yeah, I am exactly the same. I kind of have to be dragged kicking and screaming into bed, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've spent so much time in the chair, my body it shuts down almost, and I can't even get out of the damn chair. I'm that screwed
Yeah.
up. But go ahead. Oh, and to touch on one of your earlier answers, Bob Dylan sucks. Just want you to know that.
Oh man, come on, that's not fair. No, he's one of the most celebrated songwriters in history, possibly the most celebrated songwriter
Okay,
in
no,
history.
all
No,
right.
I'm not having that. Slanderous.
Max, I will give you that. He is possibly a celebrated songwriter, but his singing is just. And then I went in. I just, I can't. I'm sorry. No, he sucks. He's horrible.
I think there's a misunderstanding around it, and I think it's not. He's not a singer, as such, like you say. I think
I could have told you that.
it's it's poetry, isn't it? Essentially, it's musical poetry, and it's more on the lyrics, it's more on that kind of thing. For me, I like his voice. I enjoy listening to him. I do, because I think there's kind of it's maybe not technically good or technically proficient, but there's definitely character there. There's a lot of character, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Character's one way of putting it, definitely.
Okay, Max, I'll let you go for whatever you want. I mean, I'll give it to you, not a problem. Um, here goes a good question. I've been accused of not asking the same typical 5 questions. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
I just did an interview with somebody, and she said at the end of the show, I asked her, "What'd you think?" And she goes, "It was good. Was it the same 5 questions I always get asked?" And I said, "Thank you." Let's get back to the influential people. What do you got besides your
Yes, sorry, yeah.
girlfriend? You got anybody else influencing you in your life?
Um, I don't know. My parents, of course, are a huge help on me. They're very supportive of what I've done. Now I've gone self-employed and things like that of trying to go full time with this thing. They're very, very supportive, and I don't know in terms of people. I think, in a way, I'm almost drawn more to musicians and things than kind of real life influences. I've got plenty of friends and things like that, but I more like to kind of creatively speaking, I kind of no. There's a guy who no, I don't know. I think musically it's more artists and things that probably influence me and inspire me. I'll see ideas for things online and kind of go, that's an idea. I'll do that. I don't think I kind of can pinpoint specific people
All
really, other
right.
than maybe my parents and my girlfriend. So,
All
well,
right.
there you go. That's 3: mum, dad, girlfriend. There you go. Nice and easy.
No, but some of your influences come from other ideas. I mean, people think or say, well, you're just stealing an idea when you're not stealing it.
It's
You're,
borrowing. Borrowing is the
well,
word.
even if you borrow it, but sometimes it's seeing an idea and creating an offset of it. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
going to the store and going to your car are 2 different things. So if you look at an idea and they've done composing one way and you compose it a separate way, you've taken an
Yeah.
idea. Um, if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Oh man, that is not a usual question.
It's not Max.
First
I
off,
told
can it
you
be
I
tea
don't.
instead of coffee?
I'm not gonna. I'm not. Yeah, of course. You London people. I told you. If he's from the UK. I'm sorry, from the UK. But
Yeah.
I told you I'm not going to ask normal questions here. So if you could have tea and crumpets with any historical figure, would you choose anybody? Who would you choose?
um, there's a lot of people I'd love to sit down with a notepad and just talk with. I think
I think one of them
in
is
terms of a
Mozart.
conversation, yeah, Mozart and Beethoven and that sort of figures, fascinating, of course. I think maybe David Bowie. David Bowie's a good one, of course. David Bowie's a very good one. I think what he
Okay.
did was very, very interesting in a lot of ways. I think really. I think Freddie Mercury is perhaps another. I think
They were
he
definitely changing music as we knew it in their day. Definitely, they were
and
definitely
it's not even
pioneers.
just about the music with them. I think it's about the showmanship and the kind of stage personality, which in a way I think masked them both being quite shy people in a way. I think, in my opinion, of course.
No, they definitely had
Um,
the showmanship. I agree with you. I mean, Bowie with the makeup, and Freddie was very, I think, flamboyant in his.
of course,
But
get a whole crowd in the palm of his hand like that, easy.
right, I mean, did you happen to see the movie for Queen?
Bohemian Rhapsody, yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
I mean, if you look at the part where he just came out to the audience and he was doing the lyrical warm up, um, the
Yes, yeah,
I mean, to have people do that. But a lot of concerts, you can see that, but you could tell that, Freddie really had people in the palm of his hand.
it's the confidence, isn't it? It's the confidence to be able to do a move like that and to pull it off successfully as well. I mean, it's
Exactly.
it's one thing to even attempt it, but to do it and succeed is, yeah, it's impressive.
But
I think there's another answer actually that's a bit of a strange one. It's not particularly musical. Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings, I think is one
you,
of the most interesting figures there's ever been. Fascinating.
it figures you would be a Lord of the Rings person. I mean, I knew it.
Of course, of course.
I had to, I guessed that. But also, uh, I lost my track, my frame of mind there. But all right, is there a common myth about your job or field of expertise? Is there a myth out there about what you're doing?
There's many myths about what I do. Really, I
Uh,
think
Give me
where
an
do you start?
example.
I think with mastering, well, a lot of the work I do these days comes from mastering, right? So that's like I mentioned earlier, that's polishing tracks up to be a good level,
Right,
and there's an awful lot of stigma and misconceptions about that role. It is not mixing. It's not part of the mixing process. It's not about turning guitars up and down and things particularly. These are things that can be addressed, of course,
right,
but largely speaking, it's more getting what you have done as the mixing engineer and then kind of optimizing that so it sounds the best that it can.
right.
I think that's probably something a lot of people don't particularly get. I think as well, in terms of gigging, it's work. It's
Yeah.
not all fun and games. I love being on stage. I really enjoy it. I don't particularly love driving to venues and loading the gear in and sound checking
Well,
and
you're
waiting between the
talking
sound check and the show. And yeah,
you're talking about half of the job that we all hate. I mean, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
in
And I think it's the half the job that people don't particularly remember or even associate with it.
I mean, in my earlier days, I hated lugging, the coffin, the amp rack, the the
Yeah,
probably about 7 or 8 crates of records in and out of my
of
truck.
course. Yeah.
People always said, "Oh, why don't you get somebody?" And I was like, I'm not that lazy. I'm really not that lazy of a person. I can do it. And
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I was a bit of a physical person, and I like to do it. But right, driving to the gig, I sometimes, depending on where it was, I didn't like it either. I didn't like driving home at the end of the gig because a lot of times I was drunk. But that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that actually is the best thing about becoming a bigger and better version of who you are, because it got to the point where I didn't have to carry my gear. I didn't have to drive back and forth from a gig I went downstairs. There was a car service. Um, you
Of
know,
course, yeah, yeah.
I could just walk in and sit down for a little bit. So, when and I've talked about this, you're a little bit of a celebrity not because, I'm not going to define celebrity for anybody, but I'm just saying is you become a bit of a celebrity because people know who you are. And
Yeah,
especially in the DJ world, that's really hard because our faces aren't
of
plastered
course, yeah, yeah.
all over the TV. But when people come to see you, it's a little bit of being a little bit of a celebrity. So what's one of the myths about your
Yeah.
field? Give me a myth, because this is, well, you were just saying
Oh,
something, but I'm assuming there's got to be a myth with the equipment. Well, you'll be the best in your business if you use XXX.
yeah. There's an awful lot of them, aren't there? I don't think it's as much myths, really. It's not these things that are kind of widely circulated as fact or things like that. I think it's more misconceptions is the word maybe
Okay.
of people get often the wrong end of the stick in things like production and things. I think it's very important to remember that ultimately what gear you have doesn't matter. When have you ever listened to a record and gone, oh yeah, that's definitely an all analog compressor, all analog equalizer, and so and so.
Yeah.
It's not how it works. It's just your brain doesn't focus on that. I think which is not to say those things don't sound good. They sound very good, but they're not necessary. They're absolutely not necessary.
Right.
In terms of myths, I think maybe the myth that electronic music is somehow inferior to like classical music and other kinds, that
Right.
drives me up the wall. That absolutely drives me mad.
Yeah.
That there's the big kind of presumption that electronic music doesn't take any skill to produce.
No.
And I
No.
really
No.
don't quite understand why people think that, of course, because the whole thing of finding that right kick sound for the track it's a job in itself. That can take hours sometimes, as I'm sure you know yourself,
Yeah.
production and things.
Well, that's why I don't produce anything, because I have this horrible mind. I have this horrible brain of mine, and what happens is, and I've explained it before to people, I'll put down one track, then it'll be two, three, four, and I have all these overlays, and they just never stop. And you know, by
Yes, yeah.
by the time I'm done, I think you've gone through it too. Oh, this will sound better with a little bit of this. Oh, let me add a little bit of that, a little
Of
bit,
course, yeah.
and then by the time you know it, you've made a shepherd's pie, and all you wanted was a cracker. And
Hello.
it's
Oh, I'm sorry. I just lost your signal there for about 30 seconds or so.
okay. No, I was just
Well,
saying that you you wanted a cracker, but instead you've made a five-course meal. You know,
yes, yeah, 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 definitely.
and it's annoying. So I've been
And I
there,
think
done
it's
that.
a big thing of the learning curve for me, in particular with going full time, was the idea of knowing when to walk away.
Yes,
Of,
definitely.
you can't spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours working on the same track over and over again when you're not being paid any more for that.
Right.
I think you need to kind of know when you have done a job. And because the problem is for me, of course, 90% of the work takes maybe 10% of the time.
Right.
It's the last 10% of the track that takes all the time to really go, right, how can we make this work? How can we add these little elements on top? And with that, again, it's knowing when to walk away. It's knowing when you've done enough and people aren't going to hear what you do from that point onwards.
Right. I've been there, done that. How do I end the track? Do I want to add a little echo? Do I want to add some delay? Do I want it to be a fade
Yes, yeah.
out? Do I want it to be a fade out? Do I want it to be a dead stop? I've done a little
Yeah.
studio time myself, and that's why I stay away from it. It's too
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's too hard. It's not too hard for me. It comes very easy, but the thought
Some people's
process is
brains don't
annoying.
work that way, do
Right.
they? Some people just don't suit that kind of way of working.
I mean, I've worked with people that say, "All right, this is how it's going to end. Done, over with," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Wow," because I still have
I
20
wish I
ideas.
could be like that.
Right.
I really wish I could be like that.
Right. I still have 20 ideas on how it could have ended, and it's annoying.
Yeah,
Um, What's the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
Um, I think the big one for me that really has changed the way I sort of view things is to not view like uh, don't view things as failures. Don't view things as something wrong. Essentially, it
Right.
just wasn't right. If you go for a job interview and you don't get the job, it's not a failure on your part as such. It's just not right for you. If it was someone better, it's not a thing like that. In particular, with this sort of thing, when you're competing for jobs and maybe someone chooses a different engineer to you, or you don't get the job that you really wanted, like with an art commission or something like that, say,
Right.
it's not personal. It's not, and you can't view that way. You've got to have the thick skin to be able to take the criticism of your work and not kind of be upset by doors closing.
Well, would you say that, again, not you personally, but what you're doing, that there is a lot of that constructive criticism? Would you say that being a producer slash composer, etc., would you say that that is a field filled with uh, that criticism?
I would, apart from one thing, I don't think a lot of it's constructive criticism. I think that a lot of it is just criticism. I think, like you say, people, go into one of your shows and going, your music's shit.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing where I think, you can spend hours and hours working on a track. You can spend a week on it. You can upload it to YouTube, and then someone can listen and go, no, don't like that. Give it the thumb down button, and that's that. The first only reaction on that track is then a thumbs down.
Right.
I think you can't read too much into these things, and I think if you want to get anywhere remotely past this first square on the chessboard, you've got to kind of get that thick skin and get used to rejection and get used to, well, I don't want to call it failure because it's not failure, but
Right.
get used to criticism. And yeah.
Do you think it's being overconfident though? Like people that will come to you and they're gonna sing a track, and you're sitting there praying that your wife comes in and puts a cleaver into your head so you can stop the madness. Do you feel that you might have some overconfidence sometimes that gets you in trouble as to where, if I say to you, Max, you know what, the track overall is good, but I think the verses are bad, or because a lot of us don't think when we talk, and that's me. That's how I am.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
I might say to you, Max, again, the track is solid. I like it, but I think the verses, and you're gonna be like, mate, you suck. You're horrible. I don't want to talk to you no more. Who knows what you're gonna say, but it's not a situation that someone says, wow, you know what? Let me listen to it again, and maybe
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have something there. It's just like people that go out wearing certain pieces of clothing that they never should have put on. Do you think that overconfidence
I
is a killer in what you're doing?
I I'm a very shy person. I'm a very, very shy person. I don't really standing on stage and singing songs that I've written doesn't really come naturally to me, which is very ironic because I do it, of course. I kind of can't believe I do that sort of thing. I swallow those feelings down and move on. Essentially, it's the way I kind of try and deal with it.
Right.
I mean, we were talking earlier about Freddie Mercury, of course, who you can argue is very, very overconfident, but he has the right to be because it's Freddie Mercury.
Well, yeah,
I think
there's a
I
big
don't.
difference when you're overconfident and you can back it up.
Yes, and
It's
you have the skills to back it up.
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's different when you're overconfident
I
and you
don't
don't have
know.
anything to back it up with.
I'm fortunate in that a lot of the people I deal with and work with and are friends with, of course, are not overconfident at all, and even not confident in a way, really, of quite shy, reserved people. I think is maybe that's because I'm quite a shy, reserved person. It's sort of naturally who I'm attracted to, and
Right.
attract. But I don't know. I do think that when you you can a first impression means a lot. I'm sure if you're sharing a bill with another DJ
Yeah,
who
definitely.
maybe thinks they're a bit better than they are, in fact,
I've done it a
to put it
hundred times.
lightly, I think it can, of course. And I think you, in that second when you meet someone for the first time, that impression that you make of them, I think, is quite a pivotal kind of moment, essentially, on how maybe a gig is going to go if you're working with them all night and things. I'm
Well,
very lucky that
yeah,
I haven't got a lot of stories about overconfident people or anything, but then
right,
maybe the reason I don't work with a lot is because they kind of learn very quickly in the live scenes and things like that. It's not how you behave.
right. In normal everyday life, um, I'm usually not turned off by people on the first impression. We're basing that on people that I'll never see again. But definitely,
Yeah,
when I'm doing a gig and I run into another DJ, um, usually like the first minute is where I can be shut down, and it's happened.
yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
For me, when I walk into a club, I'm very hi, how are you? I'm so and so. Um, blah blah blah. And then if there's not an argument, but what do you want to do? You want to go on first or second? I could care less. You know, if
yeah,
my timing, because again, I come in for an hour, so for me, that hour is, it's very high priced, but for me, that hour is to get in and get out. So if I come in and I
yes,
have
yeah,
another DJ, I'd be like, listen, no offense, but we kind of worked it out where I'm going to come on first, and oh well, I care, I give two shits less what you got going on, brother. You should have figured this out before you came in, but you know, I,
yeah,
I,
yeah, definitely.
I'm not a tough guy, but I can really be one sometimes. It sucks. Um,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things with your role?
Uh, you have to. You absolutely have to learn. I mean, you know yourself from DJing,
Yeah,
of course. You can't sleep on it for a moment. You can't ever get complacent with what you can do now. It's what you can do tomorrow. If there's one thing you don't know,
right,
you should try and learn that because there's someone else that does know it. Is the way I kind of view it. Essentially, I am very, very, very far from the best musician you'll ever meet. I am really, absolutely not. But you have to work hard at it. I think I'm a hard worker essentially, and I
but
think that's very important to
how
kind
do
of
you
keep
continue to
that
learn?
momentum and keep that learning.
How do you
Yeah,
continue?
exactly. I think it's.
How do you
I
do
think.
it though? A
Oh,
lot of
how?
YouTube? Yeah, like a lot of YouTube stuff. I got to admit,
Well, there's a danger with.
I have to admit, we've
Uh,
we've
Go on.
I have to admit, we've come to a point now where, if you want to do open heart surgery, you go on YouTube, um,
Yeah,
and for
I think that has a negative side. Though. The
well, it
issue is with
depends on who
YouTube.
you're learning from.
There's a lot of bad opinions.
Well, there's a lot of bad
Yes,
teachers
exactly.
out there
It's
too.
exactly that.
But if you want to get the basics of it, so for you, I mean, how do you learn? Yeah, do you just talk to other people? Are you getting it from the internet? How do you go about learning?
It's a combination of things, really. I mean, I think you've got to surround yourself by people you respect and like the work of, and I will, if someone knows better than me and I admire their work and so, I will absolutely listen to every single word they say, essentially.
Right,
But at the end of the day as well, I think you to a point have to make your own mind up on these things sometimes, whether that's audio, music, or anything. I think you you are the person making your songs at the end of the day. If you
right,
don't think they should go that way, then that's on you.
right,
You make that decision. Subsequently, it's your neck on the line if people don't like it, is the way I kind of see it.
right.
I think, yeah, you've got to YouTube is a very good resource. There's some very, very good content on YouTube. There's some excellent content on YouTube. On the flip side, there's some god awful content on YouTube. There's a lot of
Definitely.
opinions on things like LUFs for mastering
Yeah.
that just blows my mind that
Right.
people kind of are now, being brought up and thinking that's how you do, slamming a compressor on a track at 10 to 1 and things to get the extra volume, and you go, don't do that, please don't do that.
Yeah. What's your advice for the amateurs? What's your advice? Because everybody's an amateur in the beginning, and we like to think that those
Everyone's
amateurs,
an amateur all the way through. I
right?
mean,
But I'm just saying we
I
hope
think
that
the
those
thing is with
amateurs grow up to be professionals. What's your advice for them? People just starting out. I mean, they have all these Facebook groups, and what's your advice for people that are just starting out to do what you do? What do you say to them?
it, it's a tough one. I mean, I think for me is at the same time, a big one is figure out what you're good at. Figure out what you're good at. Figure out what you're not good at. I mentioned as a kid and things, and going into university, I played classical piano. I'm not a very good pianist. I'm not a very good pianist at all. I would like to play the piano in jazz bars maybe and things like that, but it's not particularly one of my strengths really, as in terms of learning music page by page by page and reciting it from memory. I cannot work that way. Some people can, and that's great. It's not for me. I can improvise at the piano and things like that, which is what I am better at doing. And I think it's a case of following your gut, I think, a lot of the time. And if you really keep doing something and keep practicing it and go, nope, this isn't working for me. It's not. I am not good at this, which you just might not be. It might be not be how your brain works.
Right.
Maybe if you want to kind of go pro, follow another approach to it and try and think of maybe, well, okay, I don't like that song that I wrote, but the mix is really good. I'm
Right.
going to focus on audio engineering and try and do some other people's work. I think that's kind of a really crucial thing, to diversify those skills and really work on doing what you're good at, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. Also, how many times, if any, would you say you have? Because for me, I got to see a little video and I got to see some pictures. How many times would you say you have played around with your equipment, whether it be in purchases, trades, whatever it may be? Um, I mean, is your setup what you want it to be, first of all?
Uh, I, there's a guy on YouTube called Christian Henson who is a composer down south somewhere. No, he's up in Edinburgh actually, but his content is excellent. So he's the owner of a company called Spitfire Audio, and the stuff they do is excellent. It's very, very high quality instruments. And he says in regards to recording setups and music setups and DJ setups that it's not good to view them as one thing that's finished. It's this evolving thing that moves with you over time. You can start on a set of cheap speakers and upgrade them 2 years later when you're starting to make money from it, and you can start on a little Newmark mixing controller thing for Serato or for Virtual DJ. Over time, you can then upgrade that to a full Pioneer CDJ setup. I don't think it's kind of helpful to view your studio or your decks or whatever you want to call it as one thing that's set in stone. Because here's the thing: 20 years from now, the equipment we're using today will all be outdated anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't you've got to keep on top of the curve. You've got to keep this equipment relevant and
Right.
make sure, most importantly of all, that you are happy with what the equipment can do for you.
You know what? I think that's perfectly said. That equipment evolves around you, and it's always
Yeah,
going to
it's
change.
you can have the best car in the world. If you don't like the way it drives, you don't like the way it drives. It's the same with
Yeah.
music equipment.
Okay, if you could, what would be the price tag on your dream equipment? If you could put a price tag on it.
Oh, I don't know if there's such a price tag, 'cause it's all a lot of secondhand stuff. I'm very interested in like the old synths from the 80s.
Well,
I
I
think
got to
they're
admit, sometimes
fantastic.
I have to interrupt and I have to say, sometimes the older stuff is better. People ask,
It's
oh,
got more character to it, definitely. Yeah.
definitely character, and people always ask, like with amps, oh, on the amps, am I better off going with tube? Hell yeah, and
Yes.
guitars,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, you have to remember audio equipment has its own personality, and You know, sometimes,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then sometimes that personality rolls off into a recording, and you know, a lot of people should
And
know
I think
that.
importantly as well, sometimes it influences the way that you create music. If you're using a certain set of gear that has a certain set of sounds, your music is then going to be impacted by the equipment that you're using. Yeah.
Oh, Max, I gotta tell you, finally, you know, beautifully said, beautifully said. You have anything going on that you want to promote?
Not particularly at the moment. I am working on some music at the moment. I'm working on an album which has been kind of in the works for months. I'm starting to make some headway on it, some kind of vocal type music and things like that, which is more of what I want to do, sort of thing, than kind of a lot of the stuff I've done in the past. Maybe it's a new sort of direction that I'm taking. But yeah, there's nothing in particular else at the moment. But keep your eyes peeled, and this will be coming out soon. Yeah.
Are you doing the vocals yourself?
Badly, yes.
Where can people find you if they're looking for you?
So I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these usual platforms at Maximilius001 at Maximilius with two L's. And I'm on maxrichardson.bandcamp.com if you want to have a listen or buy some of my music. It's okay. It's not the worst thing you've ever heard. I promise you that.
Max, I thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to DJ producer Max Richardson from the UK. And
Thank you so much for having me.
anytime, buddy, anytime.